In this question 4 of practice exam 2, we are looking at a limit as x and y approach 0, 0 of a fraction 7x plus 5y divided by 9x squared plus 8y. This limit will not exist. So normally these limits, sometimes they are existing, but a lot of times they're not, because depending on the path, we will get different answers. So the first thing I would do is actually try to plug in x equals 0, y equals 0. Specifically plug it into the bottom and see if it is 0. If it is 0, you got yourself a more complicated situation. If it is not, then the limit will probably exist and will just be equal to whatever happens when you plug in the values of x and y into there. Now, in this case, when I plug in 0, 0 to the bottom, I get 0. And also at the top, I also get 0. So this is one of those indeterminate form situations where you get 0 divided by 0. So we can approach the origin 0, 0 along different paths. There is an x-axis path. So here we get y equals 0. So let's take a look at what would happen if y was 0 and x would approach 0. So here, when y equals 0 is going to cancel on the top, you're not going to have a y term. And so you will just get 7x divided by 9x squared. Now, if you were to just plug in 0 at this point, you would get 0 divided by 0. But what you should think about is there a way to simplify this algebraically? And the answer is yes, because you got x on the top and x squared, which is like x times x on the bottom. One of those x's is going to cancel, and so we're going to wind up with 7 divided by 9x. That is not going to be an indeterminate form. So what is it going to be? Well, remember, when you're dividing by 0, that's undefined. But when x approaches 0, what will happen is that 7 divided by 9 and something times very something super small, the whole thing will become very large. And so if x goes to 0 from the right side, the limit would be positive infinity. If x goes to 0 from the left side, the limit will be negative infinity. But overall, the limit will not exist. Division by 0 is not okay. So this limit does not exist, which is what I'm going to type here. All right, now let's take a look at another path, how we can also get to 0, 0. And in this case, we're going to look at the y-axis, which is x equals 0. So here, y approaches 0, and we're going to take a look at what happens. So now let's plug in x equals 0. We get 5y divided by 8y. So straight plug-in of 0 again gives you 0, 0 over 0, but what you should do is see if you can cancel it, and it is very easy to see that y here cancels out, and so that's just going to be 5 over 8, which is the value of the limit. So that is 5/8. Okay, now the last one is y equals x. Actually, at this point, since we got does not exist over here, the overall limit will not exist. So we already know that does not exist. But we just need to fill out the rest. So now along y equals x. So this is where x is going to approach 0. And we're going to change y into x and simplify. So we've got 7x plus 5x divided by 9x squared plus 8x. Okay, so a little bit of simplification here. So let's see. Okay, so we've got limit. So on the top, I can combine the terms. Sine 7x plus 12 plus 5x, I'm sorry, is 12x. And then on the bottom, I still have 9x squared plus 8x. And I cannot combine x squared and x term because they're not like terms. But what can I do? Well, what I could do is factor x from the bottom. So that would be factoring the GCF. So if I factor x from the bottom, I'm going to be left with 9x from this first term plus 8. So I can see that x and x here cancels out, which is good. So I'm not going to get the 0 over 0 anymore. And so then I'm just going to have 12 on the top and then 9x plus 8 and then x approaches 0. So at this point, I can just plug in 0 for x because I don't have 0 over 0 anymore. So that will give me 12 divided by 8, which is simplified to 3 over 2. So let's go ahead and see if we can fill that. And of course, all of these are different, so there is no doubt in our minds that this limit does not exist.